says regarding last night's chapter, ذكر في الباب تأخير صلاة العشاء واختلف العلماء هل الأفضل تقديمها أم تأخيرها وهما مذهبان مشهوران للسلف وقولان لمالك والشافعي فمن فضل التأخير احتج بهذه الأحاديث ومن فضل التقديم احتج بأن العادة الغالبة لرسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم تقديمها وإنما أخرها في أوقات يسيرة لبيان الجواز أو لشغل أو لعذر وفي بعض هذه الأحاديث الإشارة إلى هذا والله أعلم. Nawawi rahimahullah says, in this chapter there is the issue of making Salat al-Isha at its earliest time or at its latest time. Making it early or making it later on, like we explained last night. And there are two main views, main schools of thought, main opinions from among the Salaf al-Salih, the pious predecessors. Imam Malik and Shafi'i, etc. The scholars, they differ on this issue. What's best? There's no difference of opinion about the permissibility of making Salat al-Isha at 10 p.m. and making Salat al-Isha later than 10 p.m. as long as Salat al-Isha doesn't go out. Whatever going out is, whether it is Shatr al-Layl, Muntasif al-Layl, the middle of the night, or whether it is before the time for Salat al-Fajr. However, the issue that's being discussed right now is what's best. Making Salat al-Fajr. When is it best to make Salat al-Fajr? 4:30, 4:20, 4:45, or 5 a.m.? When is it best to make Salat al-Dhuhr? 1 p.m., 1:15 p.m., or to make it later? Salat al-Asr. Is it best to make it at 5 p.m., 5:15, 5:30, or is it best to make it at 7, like we explained? Salat al-Maghrib, obviously being best to make it as soon as it comes in. But Salat al-Isha, when is the best time? When is the Sunnah time for Salat al-Isha? As early as it comes in, or as soon as it comes in, or later on? So he says here, those who hold the view that Salat al-Isha should be done at a later time, the proof and evidence that they use is what we previously mentioned. That the Prophet ﷺ delayed Isha. He delayed Isha. He delayed Isha. And he said, إِنَّهُ لَوَقْتُهَا لَوْلَا أَنْ أَشُقْ. He says, indeed, this is proper time, except for the fact that I fear for it to be hard. And the other group of scholars who say that it's best to make it early, they say the dalil is what the Prophet ﷺ did in most cases. What he did most of the time. And they're claiming that what he did most of the time was to make Isha when? Early. And the hadith that mentioned that he delayed it and he pushed his time back was because some type of excuse or some type of reason. Someone came to him, someone asked him for something, the Prophet ﷺ came and his hair was wet, etc. He says in this hadith, or these hadiths, they clearly show that. They clearly what? They clearly show that. Alright, so that's the brief discussion of the argument like we mentioned last night. However, one may say that the words of the Prophet ﷺ, إِنَّهُ لَوَقْتُهَا, indeed, this is its time, clearly state that it's much more than just someone coming and asking for charity. It's much more than someone having a personal issue. But the Prophet ﷺ stated that this is its time. And the only reason why I don't make Isha in congregation during its preferred time is because of the people. And if it wasn't for the people, I would make Salat al-Isha now. And the reason why I made it late is because someone came up to me and asked me. And since I made it late, I'm going to explain to you that it is its actual proper time. So that view seems to be stronger. That view seems to be stronger because that's clear text. And the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't just delay Salat al-Isha just because someone came up to him and begged him for money or someone had a personal problem and that was it. But he delayed it and then he did what? Explained that it's virtuous time. Everybody clear on this? Tight. So it's a difference between someone doing something because something comes up and not saying nothing else. And then someone doing it because of what came up and then explaining it. He said, you know, you're really only supposed to get this amount of money. You know that, right? Wa alaikum salam. So I'll pay you extra. I'll pay you extra. But this week, it was slow. So the reason why I'm giving you less money than what I normally give you is because it's what? But then I say what? This is what you're what? Actually supposed to get. But I know you have a family. This is what you're actually supposed to what? But I know that it's a hardship if I only give you what you deserve. So it's no longer the same anymore. It's no longer what? The same. So the Prophet ﷺ, he clearly mentioned that this is the time for Salat al-Isha. So perhaps that view is the strongest view, is that it's preferred to delay Salat al-Isha. To delay Salat al-Isha. And there are other fiqh details pertaining to delaying Salat al-Isha, such as the congregation. If there's no other place or no one that you can make the congregation with, no, you pray with the congregation. All right, by clear on this, you pray with the what? Congregation. That's the first detail. Second detail, or detail number 2, is delaying Salat al-Isha with the fear of falling asleep. Obviously, you don't do something which is extra, or attempt to do something extra, and you leave off that which is what? Obligatory. And there are other details as well. Everybody clear on this? With regards to women, or men who are travelers, or men who are not going to the masjid because the masjid is far, or there's another excuse or a reason why they can't go to the masjid. If you're not on a rigid prayer schedule, then it's best to make Isha when? Later on, and not make it as early as it comes in. Everybody clear on this? There's a difference. These are details that pertain to this issue. Tight, moving forward. An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he comments on some of the other parts of the hadiths by saying, نام النساء والصبيان أي من ينتظر الصلاة منهم في المسجد وإنما قال عمر رضي الله عنه نام النساء والصبيان لأنه ظن أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنما تأخر عن الصلاة ناسيا أو لوقتها. It says here that when Umar رضي الله عنه said that the women and the children have fallen asleep, he says this means the women and children that were waiting in the masjid. The women and children that were waiting in the masjid. We explained that last night and all of the different fawaid that come from that. And we have another faida tonight by saying this shows the permissibility for women and children to be in the masjid. And not like many cultural practices today, and maybe even some modern day madhabs, in which the people indirectly push women and children from coming and sitting in the masjid. Even if they don't say it directly, but they say it with their actions. You get the feel that you're not welcome in the masjid. A woman should not go to the masjid. Children should not be in the masjid. Take your child home. No one is babysitting. People are making noise. The children are crazy. Don't stand in the front row. This is the reality. We briefly had discussed before, in brief, the issue of a woman praying in her home and a woman praying in the masjid. The hadiths that mention that the women were in the masjid in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, a great number of them, most of them are in where? Bukhari and Muslim. That clearly state they were in the masjid. The messenger knew about them in the masjid. He prevented men from stopping them from going to the masjid. And the hadith that say that the best place for a woman to make her prayer, you find what? Problematic issues with the authenticity. I'm not saying they're weak. I'm just trying to make a point. I'm not decisively saying that they're weak now, nor am I saying they're authentic. But I'm trying to make a point. Is that there's an abundance of hadiths that prove that women prayed where? In the masjid. And the Prophet, an abundance. And several different incidences and stories. And the hadiths that say that the best place to pray is in her home are very few, in light of that large number and the authenticity as well. Everybody clear on this? Let alone some of the problems that come forth from this opinion and this view. With regards to sisters not learning, not studying. You go to the masjid is a huge difference on your deen. Being on time, how you dress, how much knowledge do you learn by coming to the masjid? How much wisdom do you get by coming to the masjid? Sisterhood, how much community fabric is knitted just by being what? In the masjid. Tayyib, let alone your children. They learn when they come to the masjid. You take them to the masjid. You can't play around like that. You can't run around like that. After the salat, you can run and have fun with the children, but not during the salat. After the salat, before the salat, we can eat, we can drink. There's nothing wrong with being a human being. You play with Jassim, toss them around. That's a good thing, but not in the salat, son. Stay still. You don't wear those short shorts in the salat like that, son. You teach your children and you embrace them and not shun them. Embrace them. Bring them to the masjid. Let them learn the masjid. That's better than doing what? Shunning them. And there are many other issues that pertain to this, such as children or young boys praying on the front row, grabbing them by their ears or snatching them by their collars. Go to the back. This is a reality. There are many adverse effects that come forth from this. Tight. Moving forward, he says here that the women and the children had fell asleep, meaning they were in the masjid. And Umar radiallahu anhu, he says, the only reason why he said this is the Prophet ﷺ is that he thought that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ had forgotten, or there was something that he wanted to remind the Messenger of Allah ﷺ of. And we explained this last night, is that there's nothing wrong with a subject reminding the leader. There's nothing wrong with a subject commanding the leader, forbidding the leader, advising the leader. Obviously there's a time and a place, there's an etiquette, there's a way in which you do it. Everybody clear on this? But the concept of someone who's in your inner cabinet, there should be no shyness for him to say, this is wrong. Have you forgotten? How many hadiths do we have? And they asked the Prophet ﷺ, An-Nasita? Have you forgotten, or has the prayer been shortened? And the Prophet ﷺ, he never said, be quiet. He says, I have neither what? Forgotten, nor has the prayer been shortened. Everybody clear on this? So the concept of today and yesterday, leadership, Islamic leadership today and Islamic leadership yesterday, it's like night and day. It's like what? Night and day. And you read many narrations of the Salaf al-Salih and their stance with regards to the rulers, what they said, what they did, what they refused to say, and what they refused to do. And it's like night and what? Day to day. And that's why we said it's a huge difference between actually reading and studying what the Salaf did and said, and what people today do and say that call themselves Salafi. Sometimes it's parallel, and other times it's what? Like night and day. Everybody clear on this? It's very important for us to understand this. Just because someone claims something does not mean that it's authentic. It doesn't mean that. If you go to an Italian restaurant, it says authentic Italian cuisine, authentic Sicilian cuisine. That means nothing until you actually taste the what? You taste the food. Everybody understand this? So saying and claiming doesn't mean that it's valid. You have to taste the garlic sauce. You have to taste the pasta to make sure this is an authentic recipe. And it's not a commercial, watered down what? Ragu, huh? I don't want to mention no names. Tell you, everybody clear on this or not? This is a very important concept, guys. The way of the Salaf al-Salih is clear. And it's found in these books. What people do today and what they say today, and they say they're following the way of the Salaf al-Salih. Sometimes it is accurate, and oftentimes it's very inaccurate, and it's a modern day twist, a modern day interpretation, a scholar, a country, a government, a movement that takes a view, whether it's pertaining to politics, the government, the salah, many different issues that you read, how you study, how you speak about certain issues of the religion. And the Sahaba would never talk about this. They would never get into this detail. They would never sit and argue with them like that. Abadan. Everybody understand this? If you want to go even deeper than that, it doesn't just have to be a modern day thing. Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah ta'ala, one of the greatest scholars of Islam, if not the greatest scholar, how he argued and debated with the different groups and the different sects and the parties that he lived with. It's not like how Imam Ahmed and Bukhari and those other ulama of the past, how they dealt with the innovators and the people of misguidance. Would they argue with them in detail? Would they write long, extensive books? And oftentimes they wouldn't. And they would say, this is the kitab and the sunnah. This is what the Sahaba said and did. Take it or not. Khalas. We're not arguing with you. We're not debating with you. We're not getting into this philosophical ilm al-kalam debate with you. Everybody clear this or not? Was he right or was he wrong? It's not the point. We're trying to show you that there's levels. There are levels of what? Of organic. And just because you claim that it's organic doesn't mean that it's what? Actually organic. Everybody clear this or not? Tayyib. Moving forward, it says here that the Prophet ﷺ, Umar radiallahu anhu, thought that he may have forgotten or something like this. Tayyib. It says here, وَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ التَّأْخِيرَ الْمَذْكُورَ فِي هَذَا الْحَدِيثِ وَمَا بَعْدَهُ كُلُّهُ تَأْخِيرٌ لم يخرج به عن وقت الاختيار وهو نصف الليل أو ثلث الليل على الخلاف المشهور الذي قدمنا بيانه في أول المواقيت. He says that was meant by these hadiths that the Prophet ﷺ delayed Salat al-Isha as long as Salat al-Isha doesn't go away from its selected time. وقت الاختيار, its selected time. No, he says, in the selected time for Salat al-Isha is midnight, or when the third of the night passes. على الخلاف المشهور. He says, well-known difference of opinion when Salat al-Isha goes out and when is the best time to make what? Salat al-Isha. We previously explained the technical issue with regards to Salat al-Asr, and how Salat al-Asr, according to many scholars, has two times. The preferred time and the necessary time. وقت الاختيار and وقت الضرور أو الاضطرار. We explained this in detail with regards to the majority of the ulama and the Hanafi school of thought. And they say that it's unlawful for a person to make Salat al-Asr at this time unless there is an excuse, even though Salat al-Asr is still in. It's still in. So if Asr comes in at 5 p.m. and it goes out at 8:28 p.m. مثلا, they say the best time to make Salat al-Asr is 5, 5:05, 5:10, 5:15, like that. And even though Salat al-Asr is still in at 7 p.m. or 6:45 p.m., they say it's unlawful to delay it to that time unless you have a reason, even though it's what? Still in. But clear on this? And obviously, other schools of thought, whether it be the Hanafis, they say that's the best time to make it, or that is the actual time to make it. Everybody clear on this? So Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, is that what's meant by delaying Salat al-Isha, those who hold the view that you should delay it as long as it doesn't go past its waqt al-ikhtiyar, which is either a half of the night or a third of the night, as we previously explained. Moving forward. The hadith that says, or the part that says what? Lawla and ashuk. The concept of a major pillar of the Sharia. And that is, there is no hardship in the Sharia. There is no absolute hardship in the Sharia. And anything which seems to be hard or feels hard is either going to be one or two things. It's either going to be relative or it's not from the Sharia. Anything in the religion that is actually hard is either going to be relatively hard, marginally hard, subjectively hard, or that act is not from the Sharia at all. It's alien to the actual Sharia. So, a relative hardship is such as what? Fasting in the summertime. Do you have to fast every month? 12 months out of the year you fast? You only fast what? 1 out of 12 isn't a bad deal. Push come to shove. Right or wrong, Harun? Even if it was a torturous, it's still 1 out of what? 2 out of 12, 3 out of 12, 6. Half of the year you have to fast. 1 month, and there are 11 months in which you do not have to fast. Those who are elderly, old, don't have to what? Fast. Those who are traveling don't have to. Those who have certain jobs in which they have to have those jobs don't necessarily have to. Those who are pregnant and breastfeeding, those who are young, etc. So the supposed hardship of fasting in the month of Ramadan is only going to be what? That's not the word we use. Relative to a time, to a people, etc. And then you don't have to fast the whole entire 24 hours. It's only the daytime. And even deeper than that, Ramadan is not always going to be in the summer. As the time moves forward with the lunar calendar, it'll eventually be in the spring, the fall, the winter, etc. So it isn't an absolute hardship. Everybody told us on a Hajj. If you've made Hajj before, you know the Hajj is a what? Without a question, it's a hardship. Financially, physically, the people, you get hurt, you get injured. I remember one time, and this is a true story, we were finished our Hajj, me and a brother from Cleveland. Okay, another graduate from the College of Hadith. We finished our Hajj some years ago. And alhamdulillah, we got just beat up just a little bit. His legs, we walked, we suffered a little bit, but it was okay. Got back to the hotel. We're still in Ihram. I was walking up an escalator and I had on some Crocs. Somehow the Crocs got stuck in the escalator, my foot came out and my whole entire toenail was ripped off by the metal escalator. blood, everything. Not a little bit of skin, everything was torn off my toe, bleeding. And this is after we had what? The hardships was still there. Everybody clear on this or not? You didn't escape yet. The Hajj was done. We were, alhamdulillah, finished, getting ready to wash up. My whole toenail was removed. It was bandaged, everything all the way back to Medina. So the point is, the Hajj is a hardship. But it is an absolute hardship or what? How many people have to make a Hajj? Old people, young people, poor people, sick people. They don't have to. A woman without a mahram doesn't have to. A man does not have to pay for his wife's. It's not mandatory to pay for your wife to make one Hajj. Abadan, not mandatory. Comes from her money. And if he doesn't have the money to take her on Hajj, it's a good thing. But if he doesn't, then it's what? It's no sin. Everybody clear on this or not? How many times do you have to make Hajj? You may live to 70, 60, 80, 90, 100. And you only had to make Hajj. You only had to deal with the hardship what? Once. So it's a relative hardship. There is no absolute hardship in the deen of Islam. Standing up, praying, the list goes on. Any issue that you want to bring up. And if there is a hardship that is absolute, it isn't from the Sharia. It's from this Sheikh's view, his opinion, this government, this person, this cultural practice. But there is no absolute hardship in the deen of Islam. وَمَا جَعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ. Allah says He has not made any hardship upon you in the deen because it's the way of Abraham. It's the way of your forefather who? Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. So this is a very important concept to understand, especially in light of the attack on Islam and the attack on the Sharia of al-Islam. Is that it's hard, it's brutal, it's inhumane, it's barbaric, it's misogynic, it's this, it's that, it's this, and it's that. No, you don't know what the Sharia is. This is culture and this is Sharia. This is ijtihad, the fatwa of this sheikh, and this is the actual text of the Sharia. And if it is something which is relatively hard, then it's only what? Relative. It's only what? It's only relative. And it never ever lasts what? Forever and apply to every single person. Everybody clear on this or not? And then any example that you can bring, it's going to fall in one of these categories. So therefore, the Messenger of Allah, he says, if it wasn't for the fact that I'm afraid of making it hard, this goes to show that there's no hardship in the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the moment that people feel something that's hard and difficult, it ain't the what? It ain't the Sunnah. We're done. We're talking about the Sunnah. It ain't the what? It's not the Sunnah. You can call it whatever you want to call it. But it's not the way of Muhammad. As we said on Friday, the way of Muhammad is what? Sweet. It never leaves a bitter taste. It never is a bad taste in anyone's mouth. Even if they can't grab it, they can't understand it all, but it's not going to leave a bad taste in their mouths. The moment you leave a bad taste in someone's mouth, you force it upon someone, it's not the Sunnah. Whatever else, it's what? Called. Whatever other title or name that is what? Given. Everybody understand this? The way of Muhammad ﷺ is simple and easy. Simple and what? Simple and easy. Everybody clear on this or not? When you live overseas and you study with the scholars of Islam, the people who have knowledge of the Sunnah and trying to implement it properly and correctly, look how they behave with the people. Rather you go into the Sheikh's house, and this is no exaggeration, I can tell you 100 stories. His own son comes into the room and he meets his guests, he meets the students, he meets the brothers and sisters on Umrah. What does his son look like? His son may have a shaven beard. His son's thobe is beneath his ankles. His son is studying engineering. His son is in another country. He's not studying the deen. And the room is full of students from across the world with big beards. And this is the Sheikh's son. This is his own family. Is the Sheikh beating him upside the head? You have to do this. It's haram. You're evil. You're a sinner. No, he's not. But he's leading by example. He's taught his family. He's educated his family. But he cannot physically force his son to do everything. And the people who sit and they study with the Sheikh, they go back to their countries and what do? The exact opposite. That's unfortunate. The exact what? They do the exact opposite. They don't force and impose their will upon the people. They teach the people. They educate the people. They offer it. Those who wish to take it, take it. And those who don't want to take it, I cannot force you. And it doesn't leave a what? Bad taste in anyone's mouth. And everyone in the village, every basic person knows that's the Sheikh's house. This is Sheikh Fulan. And all love him and respect him. Even if they're not all following everything that he's teaching. Everybody clear on this or not? So it's very important with regards to teaching and dawah, is not to leave a bad taste in the mouths of the people. You educate, you warn, you enforce upon those whom you have authority to enforce. When someone reaches a certain age, or they're beyond your jurisdiction, it's no enforcing. All I can do is advise, and that's all. That's it. Khalas. And if you don't implement and follow everything, it doesn't mean that you can't come and sit in my class and you're not welcome in my masjid. A brother who comes and his pants is beneath his ankle, they're not above his ankle, get out the masjid. Don't sit in my class. What is this? What is this? Everybody understand this? You can't force him to do that. You can't kick a Muslim out just because he's not implementing an issue of ijtihad. That's incorrect. That's improper. And the ulama themselves that you quote from, they themselves what? They don't do it. Outside of their homes, their cities, their countries, like we were speaking about this morning, they don't have the authority to do that. Nor is it their place to force the people to listen to everything that they what? That they say. So the sunnah is not supposed to leave a bad taste in your mouth. And the Prophet ﷺ on several occasions, whenever he thought this was happening or it happened, he always censured his companions. And he warned them from doing this. Inna minkum lamunaffirin. He says, from among you are those who push people away. Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, from the most knowledgeable of the Sahaba, he asked him, was he a fitna maker? He says, are you a fatan? And he never embarrassed Mu'adh. Once again, Sunnah of Muhammad, and this and that is a different story. He spoke to Mu'adh what? Face to face. And he didn't address Mu'adh in front of all of the companions. He didn't talk about him and mention his name in front of everyone. He spoke to him like a man in front of his face. And then he spoke to him and said whatever he said to him. He says, Afatanun anta ya Mu'adh? He says, are you a troublemaker? And the only thing that Mu'adh did was do what? He didn't curse nobody, spit at anyone, growl at anyone, bite anyone, hit anyone, kick anyone. He didn't disrespect anybody. His only crime was that he led the salah in such a long manner, and which was a hardship upon that peasant man. I have my camels that I have to tend to. Allahu Akbar. Look at 2018 and the time of the Prophet ﷺ. The only sin Mu'adh did was what? He read a long surah. And the Prophet ﷺ, he asked him, was he a what? A fitna maker. He did not want anyone to have a what? Bad taste. This is my direct student, Mu'adh ibn Jabal. He represents me. There's no way that you can have a bad taste. Today, we see it as worship to Allah. It's ibadah to put bad taste into people's mouths. We think that it's getting closer to Allah by running and driving people away. And that's the true sunnah. That's the way of the salaf. It's to intentionally kick people out and be harsh. That's unfortunate. And it has happened. And many people, whether they're youth, communities, masjids, family members, they've run away from the sunnah because it was represented in an improper way. Let alone if it actually wasn't the what? It wasn't even the sunnah from the get-go. Everybody clear on the sunnah, and that's sad. And it was a time and an opportunity in which there was a golden chance for a lot of people to be guided and to be upon the correct way. But once they get that bad taste, they're what? They'll never forget that. They see you coming in the masjid, dressed a certain way, talking a certain way, you studied in a certain place, they don't even want to hear anything you have to say. This is dangerous. And the Prophet ﷺ, he warned his companions from doing this. He warned them from doing this. Khairan inshallah, moving forward. So the Prophet ﷺ, he says, if it wasn't for a hardship, then I would have done it. Moving forward, An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he then says, فَقَالَ حِينَ خَرَجَ إِنَّكُمْ لَتَنْتَظِرُونَ الصَّلَاةً وما ينتظرها أهل دين غيركم فيه أنه يستحب للإمام والعالم إذا تأخر عن أصحابه أو جرى منه ما يظن أنه يشق عليهم أن يعتذر إليهم ويقول لكم في هذا مصلحة من جهة كذا أو كان لي عذر أو نحو هذا. An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala then says another fa'idah is that when the Prophet ﷺ went out to them, he said that you're waiting for prayer, and there isn't a follower or followers of another religion besides you that is waiting for this prayer. So this narration, this part shows that he was talking about what? Other than the Muslims and not the actual Muslims. He says no one else is waiting for prayer except for you. He says this shows us that it's recommended for the alim and for the imam, the leader, to explain things to people if he makes a hardship upon them. I couldn't come to class. This is why I couldn't come to class. Everybody understand this? To regard their feelings and to regard their situations. طيب, moving forward. رقدنا في المسجد ثم استيقظنا ثم رقد نائم استيقظنا وفي رواية عائشة نام أهل المسجد محل هذا محمول على النوم لا ينقض الوضوء وهو نوم الجالس ممكنا مقعده وفيه دليل على أن نوم مثل هذا لا ينقض وبه قال الأكثرون وهو الصحيح في مذهبنا وقد سبق إيضاح هذه المسألة في آخر كتاب الطهارة. It says here with regards to they slept and they woke up proves that a person's wudu is not broken if he falls asleep. And it says this is understood if a person is actually firmly sitting down, as we explained last night. Then the part that says about his ring, wabis khatamihi, the shining of his ring, he says وفيه جواز لبس خاتم الفضة وهو إجماع المسلمين. This part shows the permissibility of wearing a silver ring, i.e. for men. For men. As far as wearing gold and silver and silk, that's fine for women. He says, and that's consensus. There's no difference of opinion that men are allowed to wear what? Silver rings. Men are allowed to wear what? Silver rings. And not what? Not gold rings. Tell you, what's the rule on wearing a metal ring? Obviously gold, iron, these things are gold and silver, they're metals, but I'm talking about like an iron. Something that's not silver. Is it permissible or impermissible? Hadid. Khatam min hadid. Hadith says, إِنَّهُ حِلْيَةْ أَهْلَ النَّارِ. Still, there's the jewelry of the people of the hellfire. So is that hadith sahih? Is it permissible for a person to wear just a normal metal ring?
Yes.
Permissible.
Because the hadith, when you talk about the Dawah, he said you have a silver ring.
It said, إِلْتَمِسْ وَلَوْ خَاتَمًا مِنْ حَدِيدٍ. He says, give her a ring, even if it's of iron. Even if it's of iron. So what about the argument for those who say that the Prophet ﷺ wasn't allowing him to wear an iron ring, but he was telling the man to give the woman something no matter how minute it may be. No matter how what? Walau. He says even if an iron ring. Al-Muhim, that's a discussion. We explained this in Masjid Taqwa some years back. Very good usage of the hadith. The man came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, I don't have any money to give her as a dower. And he said, look for something, even if it's an iron ring. Tayyib, ahsantum. Very good. Moving forward. Tayyib, we'll stop there as far as reading the commentary, and let's move on to the next chapter. Beginning there. Would anyone like to read? طيب. Chapter number 40. باب استحباب التبكير بالصبح في أول وقتها وهو التغليس وبيان قدر القراءة فيها. Chapter 40 says the preference of offering the Fajr prayer early at its prescribed time, and that it is the time when there is still darkness, and the length of recitation in it. And the length of recitation in it. What's meant by this chapter is supporting the view of those who say that Salat al-Fajr should be made early. The prayer should be commenced when it's dark. And perhaps when the people leave the masjid and it's relatively light, it's because of the length of the recitation. The length of the recitation. And not making Salat al-Fajr when it's relatively light. Like the Jumhur and we mentioned this, Hanafi school of thought. An example of this, a masjid that's following the majority view, they make Salat al-Fajr when? 4 a.m. Mathalan. And a masjid following the Hanafi school of thought, they'll make the Fajr at 4:45, and it's a considerable difference in the what? The light. The sun hasn't risen. It's still time for Fajr, but it's a considerable, just like Salatul Asr. Just like Asr. There's a reason why. There's a proof and there's an evidence to support that view. So the view, obviously, as we explained many times before, An-Nawawi rahimahullah, he made the chapter headings in Sahih Muslim, not Imam Muslim. Imam Muslim did not write the chapter headings in his book. Imam Muslim only put the kutub, Kitab al-Iman, Kitab al-Salah, Kitab kada. The actual abwab are done by those who explain Sahih Muslim. And from the most famous of the explainers of Sahih Muslim was Nawawi, and Nawawi's madhab was Shafi'i. So this view is not necessarily the view of Imam Muslim. And if it was a Hanafi commentator, then he would put based off of the view that he thought. Or if he was more impartial, more fair, he would just put what's extracted from the hadith. But we explained this, is that when you study a madhab your entire life, and you excel in it, and you go forward, it's going to have some type of what? Effect on you, without a question. It's going to have an effect on your thought. Everybody clear on this? So this chapter heading is not from Imam Muslim or Imam al-Bukhari. Now you may ask the question, if you're reading and studying wal-Marjan, why are we discussing Sahih Muslim? The chapter headings of wal-Marjan are the exact same chapter headings of what? Sahih Muslim. Because the compiler of wal-Marjan was the one who numbered Sahih Muslim, Sheikh Muhammad Fawad Abdul Baqi. The early books of hadith had no what in them? There was no numbers. There was no index. It was just hadith. With the kitab, and some books actually had the bab, such as Imam al-Bukhari, detailed. But there was no number. There was no what? There was no numbering system. Later on, the scholars, they came and they started to count the numbers of hadiths. And then in the modern times, the modern printing press, they actually began to number the hadiths. So Muhammad Fuad Abdul Baqi rahimahullah, he came along and he made the tarqim of Sahih Muslim. So when you do one successful project, it's going to lead you to what? Another. And you're going to use some of that leftover effort for another project. So he took the chapter headings from Sahih Muslim and he put it in his book called Al-Lu'lu wal-Marjan Fima Tafaqa alayhi Al-Shaykhan. He's the one who compiled the book. So all the chapters in this book are from where? Sahih Muslim, and not from Sahih al-Bukhari. The order goes hand in hand. That's why we can read the sharh as if it's a sharh to this, but it's not. Because it's the exact same tartib of Sahih Muslim. We explained this over a year ago. Everybody got this or not? So therefore, Nawawi rahimahullah, his view is the Shafi'i view. And that Salat al-Fajr should be made when it's dark. And the Imam recites 50 ayat, 60 ayat, 40 ayat, etc. And the people leave the masjid and it's relatively light. The Hanafi view is that the prayer should be established when it becomes light and not the opposite. Everybody clear on this or not? Tayyib, moving forward. So that's what's meant by the chapter heading, huh? Hadith Isha radiyallahu anha qalat kunna nisa'a aw nisa'u المؤمنات يشهدن مع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم صلاة الفجر متفلعات بمروطهن ثم ينقلبن إلى بيوتهن حين يقضين الصلاة لا يعرفهن أحد من الغلس. It says here, narrated Aisha, hadith number 377, the believing women covered with their veiling sheets used to attend the Fajr prayer with Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And after finishing the salah, they would return to their homes. And nobody could recognize them because of the darkness. And no one could recognize them because of the type. So this hadith shows us what the chapter heading has stated. That the Fajr was commenced and also finished and it was dark. And we didn't even get into the interpretation yet that I mentioned, in which the Imam recites for a long period of time and it's relatively light. She said that it was still what? No one could recognize their sister. Everybody clear on this or not? Everybody understand this? So this is the connection and the relation between the bab and the hadith. As we explained, this is the fiqh sunnah. The chapter heading and the what? The highlighting point. Tayyib. Before we move forward to the next hadith, what does this hadith prove? Something that we just explained. Father Abdul Qawi. The women were in the masjid. And you're going to find this, what? Hadith after hadith after hadith after hadith after hadith. So let's ask ourselves a hypothetical question. For the Prophet ﷺ to say, the best prayer for a woman to make is in her home. And for this to be known and established, how could the women continue to do what? Come to the masjid. Rather, she said they came to the masjid and it was what? Dark. People say, I saw your wife outside. It was after Isha. No sisters allowed outside the house after Isha prayer. It's Maghrib. You can't come out the house. You can't go to the masjid. Where did this come from? Harun. What is this, Yahi? Everybody understand this? This is a reality. Where does this come from? It's deeper than that. Because you find certain Muslims don't have the cultural practices. Jealousy, he says. A person having jealousy for his wife. Huh? I said no one can know my wife's name, huh? Or hear a voice. Tayyib. This is a real question here, guys. This is not just a overseas or immigrant Muslim practice. Indigenous Muslims, they say this. No woman can go to the masjid after Maghrib. You ever heard this before? You ever heard this? Back in the day? No question. So not only is it Isha or Fajr or Maghrib, but it's actual what? Fajr prayer. The women were in the masjid. She says, Nisa al-Mu'minat, the believing women, not me, the messenger's wife, no one can marry me. So the what? Believing women. Everybody clear on this or not? Another issue that can be extracted from this hadith is what? Is the hijab of the women. The women were covered up. Were their faces covered?
I think they probably was covered because nobody could recognize them.
Because why couldn't they recognize them? Because so somebody may say this proves that their faces what? Weren't covered. Because if it wasn't dark, they could. From one thing you learn what? Everybody understand the concept now? This has nothing to do with hijab. This is in the chapter of Salah, and it can take us to an issue of hijab. Everybody clear on this or not? Tayyib. We're not here to discuss that in detail right now. Khairan, inshallah. So with regards to women coming to the masjid, if it's dangerous outside, or it's unbefitting for her to come to the masjid, or she has many responsibilities, that has nothing to do with the time. It can happen in the daytime, it can also happen in the nighttime. Now, is it more prone? Do things happen at nighttime in a more higher risk? No one is going to deny that. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ مِنْ شَرِّ مَا خَلَقَ. There's no question about that. Darkness. However, no one can deny the reality that there are certain locations, certain cities, certain blocks, certain buildings in which it's safe in the daytime and in the nighttime. And there are other places in which it's dangerous in the daytime and also at nighttime. So it's not based off of the time, but it's based off of the what? The place. And more importantly, it's based off of the presence of the Muslims. It's based off of the what? The presence of the Muslims. Don't think about doing anything to this sister. It's a city or a town or a place. It's not the same in which the Muslims are afraid of the kuffar, intimidated by the kuffar. Everybody clear on this or not? If he throws a bottle at her, if he whistles at her, if he says, what you wearing under your hijab, he knows that it's what? A major consequence that's going to come. It's not the same as the Muslims are weak and inferior. Everybody clear on this? And how you conduct yourself, how you dress. Being resolute in your destination. Point A to what? Point B. Many people who become victims of crime or victims of abuse or whatever the case may be. Not all people, but there are many people, oftentimes, out of those statistics, they're bringing upon themselves. They're bringing upon themselves. What were you doing in this place at this time? Dressed like this, with this person. What were you doing? These are basic what? Basic principles. You were in a whole other place and you were by yourself, no one was with you. You traveled in this car that wasn't a reliable car. It broke down, someone did this to you. There's certain principles of life that prevent you from becoming a statistic. Everybody understand this? And that's called being street smart. Basics of life. There's nothing scholarly. This is simple etiquette. You had no place being in this section of the city at what? At this time of night. Dressed like this. By yourself. On the phone, so on and so forth. Everybody clear on this or not? So these are basic etiquettes. Khairan, inshallah. Let's move on to the next hadith. حديث جابر بن عبد الله رضي الله عنهما قال كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يصلي الظهر بالهاجرة والعصر والشمس نقية والمغرب إذا وجبت والعشاء أحيانا وأحيانا إذا رآهم اجتمعوا عجل وإذا رآهم أبطأوا أخر والصبح كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يصليها بغلس. The next narration is that of Jabir radiallahu ta'ala anhuma. Hadith number 378. The Prophet ﷺ used to pray the dhuhr at midday and the asr at a time when the sun was still bright. The Maghrib after sunset at its stated time, and the Isha at a variable time. Whenever he saw the people assembled for Isha prayer, he would offer salat earlier, and if the people delayed, he would delay the salah. And they, or, here's a difference now, it's a discrepancy. Who said it? Was the Prophet or was the companions? Him or they? He or they? It says they or the Prophet used to offer the Fajr prayer when it was still dark. That's the what? That's the highlighting point from the hadith. Is that either it was the Prophet or the companions, they made Fajr when it was what? Dark, and not when it was light outside. That's the highlighting point from the hadith. هذا محل الشاهد محل الدلالة. That's the highlighting point for the fiqh of the hadith. Now, obviously, is a discrepancy. The narrator from Jabir, or was the doubt from Jabir himself? Who prayed when it was dark? The Prophet or they, the Sahaba? And obviously, there's a big difference between the what? The two. As far as the other prayers mentioned, and we've explained them already. Dhuhr is called, or al-hajira, or al-hajir, al-hajira, coming from hajar, hijrah, a time in which the people would boycott and abandon working because it was too hot outside. And asr, he made asr when the sun was naqi, it was pure, meaning it still was what? Piercing hot. Proving the view will be previously explained. To make asr when it's early, and not to delay it. At 7 o'clock, 7:30, the sun is no longer what? Beaming on you anymore. You can look up into the sky. It's not as hot. It says here, and Maghrib إذا وجبت, يعني إذا سقطت. Wajabat means to fall, when the sun would fall. And not when it was really super dark, as we explained. And Isha, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, it was formless. Sometimes he would make it early and sometimes he would, depending on the what? The people. Because that's an Islamic society. Everyone working is Muslim. Everyone employing is what? Muslim. If they come to the masjid, let's make it now. If they need some time to sleep, some time to eat, some time to look after their families, he would do what? He would delay it. So this part of the hadith Khalid proves a major principle of HadithDisciple, and that is what? Seek the formless. It's not always set in stone. The rule is not always what? Set in stone. Depending on the time, the place, and the situation. When would a class be? How long would it be? What would it be on? There's no always what? La. Flexible. Depending on the need. Depending on the what? Depending on the need. Type hadith number 379 is the last hadith of the chapter. حديث أبي برزة الأسلمي رضي الله عنه قال أو وقد سئل عن وقت الصلوات قال كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يصلي الظهر حين تزول الشمس والعصر ويرجع الرجل إلى أقصى المدينة والشمس حية. قال الراوي عن أبي برزة ونسيت ما قال في المغرب ولا يبالي بتأخير العشاء إلى ثلث الليل ولا يحب النوم قبلها ولا الحديث بعدها ويصلي الصبح فينصرف الرجل فيعرف جليسه وكان يقرأ في الركعتين أو إحداهما ما بين 60 إلى 100 أو ما بين 60 إلى 100. Hadith number 379, listen carefully to the translation, is narrated by Sayyara ibn Salama, or Sayyara ibn Salama. My father and I went to Abu Barza al-Aslami radiyallahu anhu. Abu Barza was the Sahabi. That's his name. Like Abu Bakr, there's Abu Barza. He's the companion. So a man and his son, they went to the companion. The man and his son were from the Tabi'in. Without a question. They were from the what? Tabi'in. They were from the Salaf. The next generation of Muslims. They never met the Prophet, but they met those who met the Prophet. So me and my son, we're going to go to this scholar, this companion, and ask him a question. Clear? So, we went to ask him about the stated times for prayer. He, Abu Barza, replied, the Prophet ﷺ used to offer the Dhuhr prayer when the sun just declined from its highest position at noon. The Asr at a time when if a man went to the furthest place in Al-Madinah, he would find the sun still hot. He said, the sub-narrator, I've forgotten what Abu Barza said about the Maghrib prayer. The Prophet ﷺ never found any harm in delaying the Isha prayer to the first third of the night. And he never liked to sleep before it and to talk after it. He used to offer the morning prayer at a time when after finishing it, one could recognize the person sitting beside him. And he used to recite between 60 to 100 verses and one or both the rak'ah. And one or both the rak'ah. So let's break down this hadith. It's narrated by Abu Barza radiyallahu anhu. And he was asked about the 5 daily prayers. So the first faida we get from this hadith mukhtar is the greatest thing that you can do for your son is to teach him the knowledge of the Sunnah. It's the greatest gift that can be given to your son. The greatest thing that you can instill in your children is to teach them Islam. That's not the only thing, but that's the greatest thing. That's the what? The greatest gift that you can give your son is to teach him the deen, how to be a good worshipper of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we also benefit from this that was from the way of the pious predecessors to do what? To seek knowledge and to ask those who know. And to seek knowledge at a young age. Come on, son, I'm going to what? Teach you. We all know the famous narration of Imam Abu Dawud rahimahullah, who put a fake beard on his son. He glued hair to his face and put him in the majlis so he could hear from the sheikh before the sheikh had died. Because the sheikh was stern. No children are allowed in my circle. No children can hear from me. So Imam Abu Dawud, he disobeyed this sheikh. Listen, he didn't just take what the sheikh said. He disobeyed him. Because he wanted his son not to miss out what? On that virtue. Hearing from this grand master at a young age. So he put fake hair on his face and sat him in a circle. Everybody understand this? To teach your son at a young age. And to introduce him at the what? At a young age. Tayyib. Says here, and there's a very interesting story, Khalid, with regards to having a purpose, seeking knowledge. He entered upon him and he asked him a question about the deen. He didn't make small talk or talk about this or talk about that. Nah. There's a narration that they say, and Allah knows best, that Imam Malik rahimahullah was living in Medina. And we know that Imam Malik had many disciples. And many of them, they took the Muwatta from him. That's why there's different hunaka riwayat. They're versions of the Muwatta. They're versions of Imam Malik's book. So they say one disciple of his came from Andalusia, Spain, North Africa, the Islamic West, to Medina. He went from Andalus all the way to Medina, very far distance, especially in those times. And he said that the time in which this disciple went to Medina, we're not going to mention his name yet, the time that he went to Medina, there was something really crazy that happened in Medina. And that was that there was an elephant that had entered the Prophet's city. A huge elephant. Where did the elephant come from? Was it prepared for warfare? From the Persians, the Muslim army? Al-Muhim that the elephant was in Medina. So everyone was going crazy to see a what? See an elephant. Now just think how weird this is now. In a modern city, if there was a bobcat or a mountain lion that was in New York City, everyone would do what? They would want to go see it. Because it's something that's very out of the ordinary now. Everybody understands very what? Rare, extremely rare, let alone a big animal like that. So everyone went crazy and they wanted to see the elephant. So Imam Malik rahimahullah, they say he was in the masjid, the Prophet's masjid, and he saw that there was a young man sitting there. And the young man was sitting waiting patiently. And while everyone else was outside running around looking at the elephant. So he walked up to him. And he said to him, why are you sitting here? Why aren't you outside looking at the elephant? And he said, I didn't leave Spain or Cordoba or Andalus to see an elephant. He says, I only came here to learn from you. That's the only reason why I'm here. So Imam Malik, he immediately took him under his wing. And he made him one of his main pupils and main disciples. And some of them say that's Al-Laythi, Yahya bin Yahya Al-Laythi. One of the main versions of the Muwatta Malik. So it goes to show how people have certain priorities. They have what? Priorities. We come here to learn, we didn't come here for nothing else. And I come to see an elephant. I see an elephant somewhere else. I came here to do what? To benefit, to learn directly from you. So this is what they did. They went to this companion to ask him questions about knowledge. So he complied to them. And he said that the Prophet ﷺ, he used to make dhuhr hina tazulu shams, when the sun would disappear or go away. Meaning from its what? The zenith. The sun does what? Fajr does what? It rises. Then it goes to the middle of the sky. And the sun sits still for some time. After it sits still, it doesn't move, it begins its gradual decline to the west. Once it starts its decline, it's now time for dhuhr. It's now dhuhr time. It's now what? Dhuhr time. Dhuhr is when the sun begins to tazul, go away. Everybody clear on this? That's when the messenger made dhuhr. Meaning as soon as it what? Came in. He made dhuhr as soon as it what? As soon as it came in. That's like we explained. Number 2. And he used to make salat al-asr in congregation. And if a man left the Prophet and went to the furthest point in Medina, the sun would still be beaming hot, piercing hot, proving the view of the what? Majority of the ulama who say the asr should be made at 5 p.m. and not 7, 5:30 and not 6:45. Like we previously what? Explained. This is another dalil for this. So what? This is another dalil for that view. In other words, if I said we made asr here in Queens, and you went all the way to Staten Island, you went to Manhattan, you went here, you went to another borough, you went to Bronx, Yonkers, you went outside of the 5 boroughs, huh? You went to Long Island, the furthest tip of Long Island, and it still was hot outside. That would mean that we made asr when? Early, for you to have enough time to travel that distance. All right, brother, on this, the example that he's mentioning. Number 3, he said, and I've forgotten what he said about Maghrib. What do we benefit when the narrator says, I forgot? What do we learn from that? He's trustworthy and is also accurate. Both. That he's not lying and he's also sharp. Because if he's telling you what he forgot, that means what he narrated, he what? He didn't forget and he had it down pat. Everybody understand this? I don't remember what he said about that, but I know for sure what? And we explain this as well. The virtue of saying Allahu Alam. Ibn Sa'di rahimahullah. The virtue of saying Allah knows best if you don't know. And that it's not a deficiency, it's not a weakness, but it's actual strength. Then it shows your students that what? When I do teach you something and explain something to you, that I what? I know it well. I've read this well. Everybody clear on this? Moving forward. He then says, وَلَا يُبَالِي بِتَأْخِيرِ الْعِشَاءِ إِلَى ثُلُثِ اللَّيْلِ. The literal translation says, and he didn't care about making Salat al-Isha early or later. As we just mentioned, there was no rigid time schedule. Isha has to be made at 10:15. Isha has to be made at 10:20. Isha has to be made. It's time for the Iqamah, the Adhan, Salat, brother. That's what people do today. In the middle of your speech. In the middle of what? Your speech. It says, time to pray. Not only is that against the Sunnah, well, obviously that's obviously rude and disrespectful, but that wasn't the way of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There was no rigid time schedule. It was based off of the what? The needs of the people. Everybody clear on this or not? So certain times he would delay Salat al-Isha until the 3rd of the night. Also, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he didn't like people to talk before Isha. Or he says to sleep before Isha, to sleep. He did not enjoy, or he wasn't fond of people what? Sleeping before Isha, nor talking afterwards, meaning staying up at night. Unless there was a reason, like we explained in Tirmidhi. Seeking ilm, spending time with your family, handling the affairs of the Muslims, huh? And it goes to show you how different the lifestyle is of today and of yesterday. Life was simple and easy. Here in the city, going to sleep after Isha, everybody may not do. A brother may go to work after Isha. Graveyard shift. He may go to what? Work after Isha. This is the first meal he's eating what? After Isha. The first time he's seen his children, his family until what? After Isha. And many people, whether they're down south or other brothers, they want to go to sleep what? Right after Isha. There's no dinner after Isha. I'm not going out to hang out and eat with you, Mufti. I'm going home and I'm going to do what? I'm going to sleep. Get a good night's rest and wake up early in the morning. I have to work. Huh? He says here, and as far as the Fajr prayer, then the Messenger of Allah ﷺ would offer it. And when he finished the prayer, a man could recognize the one who was sitting next to him. This hadith is clearly problematic with what hadith? Not the previous one. Well, previous but not right before this. Hadith of Isha. Isha said that they what? They couldn't be seen because it was so dark. And this hadith says that's when a man could see someone. Because the Prophet ﷺ would recite what? 60 to 100. In each rak'ah or in rak'ahs together. Everybody understand this detail now? Everybody got this or not? طيب خيرا inshallah. So there are many fawaid in this hadith. The highlighting point is pertaining to Salat al-Isha. It's pertaining to what? Salat al-Isha. طيب. And also, well, Salat al-Isha was more of last night. Pertaining to what? Salat al-Fajr, as-Subh. طيب. With a more accurate statement, not Isha. Hadith shows us how the companions passed on knowledge. Hadith shows us the recommendation of not going to sleep before Salat al-Isha and not staying up after Salat al-Isha unless there is a need. And also shows us the recommendation of reciting long surahs in Salat al-Fajr or long verses. Khairan inshallah. Chapter number 42. And pay close attention how there isn't a what? What are we missing? There's no 41. And there's a reason behind that as well. We explain why there are missing chapters. So we'll stop here tonight. Bidnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah Azza wa Jalla certainly knows best. Perhaps you have time for a few questions before Salat al-Isha.